Now we've gotten to the point where we have made the angle for the whistle, and I use the popsicle stick to do that, going in at a 45-degree angle, like so, from the top, and then removing the extra clay. So now we have this angle right here on top. And the other side, we can open up a little bit more because we want our mouthpiece to go in here. And then what we're going to do is create that mouthpiece for our whistle to go right here. The chunk of clay I have left over will work for this. I'm going to simply make this into kind of a rectangular prism type of a shape. And if I make it too big, I can always trim it down. I'm going to start with it kind of wide. And then what I'm going to do is take my popsicle stick and put it right down through the center, trying to get it nice and straight. So we get a hole that goes all the way through. That's going to be for the air to go through. And then you have to kind of see if it's going to fit okay. So I'm going to be putting it in here. Well, it's a little bit wide. I might have to open up my clay a little bit more to get it to fit in there. I do want to leave a little bit of space between the end of the mouthpiece and where that angle is. The goal is to have the popsicle stick lined right up with the end of the angle that we made so that the air goes through and then splits at the popsicle stick. So it's important to get those parallel, nice and lined up. If my mouthpiece needs a little trimming, which they often do, I can make sure that it's nice and straight with a sharp tool, going all the way around, trimming it, leaving the popsicle stick in while I do this. I can change the shape of it slightly. I can trim off a little bit more. I can pinch it a little bit smaller if I want, so that it fits better. Okay, I want to make sure this is nice and flat. I can also bring it to the end and tap it down. Alright, then I'm going to put it in there. I want to make sure it really lines up with that angle, so it's almost like a slide, like the air would go right down that angle onto the popsicle stick. Then when you're putting it together, if the clay is still nice and wet, you don't really need to slip, score, and smear. You can just move the clay around. If the clay is starting to get dried out, you'll want to make sure you slip, score, and smear as you put this together. But at this point, you don't want to make it too joined too strongly, because you might still have to change the angle slightly to make sure it whistles. Alright, I'm going to clean up my angle a little bit. I see that the end of it is kind of squished. I want it to be nice and sharp. So I use a little tool, clean up that end, double check that my air is going to hit the end of that angle, and then I can give it a try. It makes a little bit of noise. There are lots of things that I can do to change it. I can bring in my mouthpiece a little bit closer. The gap might be a little bit far apart between these two pieces. So whenever I'm moving, I want to make sure that I keep my popsicle stick intact, so I can carefully change the position, pushing it in just slightly. Got to be careful I don't damage the body of the whistle as I do this. I want to make sure that that angle's correct. The air is going straight for that curve. Okay. Make sure there's no extra clay on the end of the stick. And try again. It's starting to make sound. You'll have to tune it, adjust it. This hole might be a little big here, so I put my stick back in and make little adjustments as I go. If the clay is still very wet, it's harder to get it to make exactly the right sound, so something that you might want to do is get it put together and then let it sit for just a little bit so that this angle can get stronger, because if you do too much adjusting while the clay is really wet, you'll just squish that angle and you'll have to start over because it won't hold up and it'll just fall apart.